Hello and welcome to Tank and Amphy News. My name's Tom. Today we are reviewing books, and we have another in the Casemate Illustrated series that we're looking at. This one is American Armor in the Pacific by Mike Guardia. This one is pretty much the same in terms of format as all the other Casemate Illustrated books I've seen. So if you have had a chance to look at these, either purchase one or look at them in the bookstore, there's no surprises as far as the format. For those that have not seen these, they're 128 pages. It's about 7 by 10, so it's roughly about the size of, I would say, like if you're familiar with any of the Osprey series books, this is in that same size, except a little thicker. The paper's quite nice, quite glossy. It's got this nice little fold over on the cover, so it makes it feel a little more bookish, as I said in one of the previous reviews. Mike Guardia is, I've got one other title of his, not part of this series, that's about modern armor. It's interesting in that one, though, it does make a note that one of his main points of interest is American Armor in the Pacific campaign, so good to know that he got to write on the topic, since that's what he's interested in. And of all the Casemate Illustrateds I've gotten so far to review, actually, this is probably the one that I enjoyed the most, partly because I feel, American Armor in the Pacific during World War II is one of those titles that doesn't get quite as much coverage as some other issues. Not that it hasn't been covered, obviously there's been books that have looked at it. But, when people think about the Pacific campaign, they don't really think of tanks. And obviously, as tanks didn't play as big a role out there as they did in Europe or North Africa, there were no U.S. tank divisions that were sent out to the Pacific, but there were plenty of U.S. tank battalions that were used. The U.S. Marine Corps was using tanks, and they did play a pretty important role in some of those campaigns. So it's nice to have a book like this that's kind of a nice, concise overview of that. And, obviously it's not going to go hugely in-depth on this stuff because that's not the nature of a book of this size. And it is primarily, I won't say primarily, it is a photo and image-heavy book like all the ones in this series. They're very visual, so... Now, while the title is American Armor in the Pacific, it does give descriptions of the different types of Japanese armor. And the book does sort of focus particularly on any examples where they can point out where Japanese armor confronted U.S. armor, which obviously is not that many examples of, or even Japanese armor versus American forces in general, which generally went very poorly for Japanese armor. Their armored forces were... there weren't a lot of them, and their equipment wasn't particularly, I wouldn't want to say good, very outdated, particularly when compared to things like the M4 Sherman. So, it's a nice overview of that. So let's just sort of open the book, I don't want to do the full overhead camera, but so you can sort of see an example. So there's photos with a bit of text, but it gives you an idea of what to expect. There's another one. It's one little error I did notice, because U.S. armor of World War II is sort of my particular favorite topic, and this one's really nitpicky. It's almost unfair of me to mention it, but I'm gonna. On their page here of, all right, Marvin Harrington tanks that the U.S. used. I don't know if you can see there. The one at the bottom by my hand. That is a tank clearly with a turret. Although the caption says, although similar in size and function to the latter-day M2, M3 series tanks, the Marvin Harrington did not have a rotating turret, thus limiting its service life. There were Marvin Harrington tanks that did not have turrets. They were some of the little tankettes that the Marines were testing right toward the beginning of the war that they rejected. These little 3-ton tankettes that Marvin Harrington made. So that's probably what they're referencing, because there's actually quite a few different tank models that Marvin Harrington made, and a few different ones that ended up serving with the U.S., although none of them I don't think ever saw combat, which is just as well, because the one thing you can say about the Marvin Harrington tanks as a whole is that they were awful. Certainly the worst tanks that the U.S. produced. So it's a good thing they didn't see service. So I just, that was the only thing when reading through the book, that little tiny errors, and that sort of stuff crops up, and it's probably unfair of me to even mention it. But, well, when you got a channel on tank stuff, you got to kind of show off what you know. That's part of the fun. So, if you are interested in U.S. armor in the Pacific War, particularly like an overview, if you haven't delved into the topic in great depth, or if you're just looking for something with a lot of nice pictures to look at, for $25, probably, like I said, probably get it for less than that online. You can't go wrong. So, Mike Guardia, I hope he does more, because the things I've read of his so far I think are pretty decent. And thank you to the fine folks at Casemate for sending me this review copy. And yeah, we'll catch you on the next one.